Sometimes there's a sense of shame. And I always share that shame and guilt are different. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am something wrong.
Mm.
So this was a sense of shame because I knew if I wanted to be CEO of 7 companies, I didn't see anyone without degrees. So I actually don't have a college degree. I started school.
Not uncommon for those that sit in your chair, for the record, for a lot of people we've had on the
Not
show.
not
Mhm.
uncommon, but there is a sense of well, I will speak for myself. Sometimes there's a sense of shame.
Mhm.
And I always share that shame and guilt are different. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I am something wrong.
Mm.
So this was a sense of shame because I knew if I wanted to be CEO of 7 companies, I didn't see anyone without degrees. I didn't know that there were people without degrees that had a seat, a C-level executive. So I did start going to school, but I started working more, and then I got pregnant with my son, and so classes became less and less, work became more and more, and then I stopped. And at the time, I was able to get a lot of jobs easily. I kind of got into operations, was able to get into a lot of startups that don't exist anymore. But when the bubble burst, that's when it mattered that I didn't have a degree because I couldn't easily get another job without the degree. That was a requirement.
Before the bubble burst, were you having any pushback, or was it only
No,
after?
it was after.
And what did that look like? Was it flat out rejection, or were you just having to?
Yeah. It was, even though I had roles in operations,
You had
which
experience.
clearly had experience, I didn't have a degree. And at the time, that was very clear. Like, you don't have a degree, and so
Wow.
right.
And what did that feel like?
So I went from making 90,000 a year, which was
Wow.
big at that time.
That's big.
You
That's
know,
big
at
for
that
an
time.
entry
At this
level.
time,
Yeah.
it was a little tough to survive, but at that time, I was making 90,000 a year, and then I went from that to 11.75 an hour. Because after 6 months, a friend of mine was able to get me into a company to be a claims adjuster for a rental car company. But I was going for other operations roles, and I would just get rejected left and right. Because the job market was so tough, it was an employer's market. And so you could ask for anything for people to have PhDs if you wanted to for entry-level roles.
Were you landing interviews, or were you not even getting that far?
Wasn't even getting interviews.
Wow.
Yeah, I wasn't getting interviews.
I have to imagine, knowing where you eventually landed, which is being an HR leader, that this informed that a bit.
100%. So I think the rejection helped me understand what the job market was truly like because I didn't have an issue getting jobs before. I was out of a job for probably 6 months. I had to move back home with my parents. Lost my place, lost my car, couldn't support myself and my son. My son was very young at the time. And so it really helped me understand like when the world of work kind of leaves you behind.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I had the skills.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I had the experience, but no one would hire me. And it took just a friend who was like, hey, I'll get you in, into a space that I hadn't been before. It's not like I dreamt of being a claims adjuster, but it was a job and I was grateful for it. But I still dreamt of being in tech. And I still dreamt of the kinds of jobs that I knew I had the experience for. And that's how, like, I still don't know today how I got into Google. I don't, because at the time, they pretty much only recruited from 10 colleges and universities. That's it.
What year is this?
This was 2005.
Okay.
So early days.
Early, totally, yeah.
Early days. And I stayed there for 8 years, large in part because I was like, I don't know how I got in here, so I don't know if I'm going to get to go anywhere else. But it was tough when I lost my job and I knew I had the skills, but couldn't get something else with my exact same job title that I had before, right? And so that absolutely informed where I am today, where I'm kind of fighting for this skills first movement. I am a STAR, which stands for Skilled Through Alternative Routes. Mm-hmm. So although I don't have a college degree, I am educated and I understand the craft in my field. And so I can say that now with confidence, but there was a lot of deep shame in the beginning.
You've talked about shame. Were you experiencing imposter syndrome too when you did ultimately land the role? It sounds like you were confident in your ability, so I don't know if it ever manifested as imposter syndrome.
It did.
Yeah.
It did just because of the degree.
Yeah.
And so it was less about I don't think I can do it, and more about what other people thought
Yeah,
of me.
totally.
I remember when I first created my first bio, this is what this person does, and the name, and everyone had their accolades and their credentials at the bottom, their PhD, their master's, their bachelor's, and I didn't have that. And so I was like, attended university, right? Because I felt like I had to in order to be at the same level as other people. So it definitely manifested, if not internally, certainly from what I thought other people thought about me.
I think it's hard not to internalize the comments that we hear, because I grew up in the Southeast, and I just remember things like girls aren't good at math. And so I was like, oh, am I not good at math? Okay, then I better not try as hard in class, or I better just sort of check out in class. But it is really hard as a woman of color, especially, I'd imagine, just for these negative comments to be made at a really impressionable age, right? You're still young, you don't have the experience, and we do oftentimes internalize that, and I think and carry it with ourselves. I remember I went to grad school, and day one thought everyone's smarter than me, everyone's better than me, and did, top of the class. But it's hard not to give up your power, I think, and give up control of like what you're feeling on the inside. But I think that's what makes who you are and where you are now from a career perspective so magical, because you're able to give that gift to people at a young age.
Yeah. And I was one of them. I'm not good at math. I would take
And
tests.
you don't have to be.
You don't actually.
Yeah.
I like to surround myself with people that are much smarter than I am.
Yes.
And so even if I don't do the maths, I have people around me that do very, very well. And that's the realization I had to come to. I don't have to be good at everything.
Totally.
Nobody's good at everything. But being smart enough to understand that there are other people who have better skills than you, I think, is what makes you a great leader.
Know what you don't know.
Exactly.